So we have considered energy efficiency around our home in lots of different ways. One of the ways in our kitchen is we really tried when we remodeled a few years ago to consider Energy Star appliances. So like our dishwasher is Energy Star, and that's just something when you're purchasing, you look for this little symbol. And then the other thing that we do in our kitchen is we have a power strip. So power strips are really important because they reduce your phantom loads. Phantom loads can be, I mean, man, for a while it was 20% of energy consumption they were predicting that phantom loads were taking, but now it's anywhere from like 30 to 40 because of all of the things that we plug in that are always sort of drawing a charge, like our cell phone chargers, our TVs, like DVD players, our laptops, our computers. So even if something isn't on, it's drawing a small load constantly. And you can feel it because you can usually feel the heat from like a charger if it's, even if it's not plugged into your phone. So what a power strip does is it will like actually cut the current. So instead of that current always being available, it'll take it and totally turn it off. So we have power strips for a lot of our electronic appliances that we turn on and off. So like at night when we plug in our phone, then we turn this on, then it will charge, and then in the morning when we take our phones with us, we turn it off. So I wanted to show the washer and the dryer, because what's interesting about them is not maybe that they're energy efficient, but I also think a super important thing to consider is they're like original to us. So these have been here since we moved in, which was in 2011, and one of the things I like to think about, and it goes kind of with also computers and any electronic, your cars, is making sure we take care of them. So trying to take care, maintain, like keep them so they're not chucked out into the waste stream, I think is really important. So we have had these a long time, and I think that's, that's another good way to think about a lot of our items that we use every day.
What do we have here?
So we're down in the deep of our basement. We have our gas forced air is our original heating source, and we have a propane tank outside, and that's kind of our what was here when we moved in. So we have the ducts that go throughout the building, the air that'll get distributed, and then we made a big decision within this last year with all of the rebates available, and we were remodeling, to also integrate into this system an air source heat pump. So I don't really get it, but it's pretty cool. And Matt and I have never had a source of cooling. And with the increasing temperatures, we thought that would be a good way to kind of have some cooling in our house, especially sometimes in the summer when it gets really, really warm. So we now have cooling, which is a very new thing for us. We're still kind of adjusting to it, but we'll also show you what it looks like on the outside of the house. And then, Matt, why don't you, I don't really get this thing, so I don't know how it works.
So this is our air sourced heat pump, and so in the summertime, it sort of magically pulls cold air out of the surrounding air and then pumps that into our furnace inside, and then that gets distributed through our air ducts. And then in the winter we flip the thermostat over to heat, and then instead of taking the cold air, it takes heat out of the air, condenses it, and then runs it into the furnace. Then obviously if it gets too cold, then our furnace will take propane and add propane heat to the air, and it all just ties together and works together. And these are supposed to be super efficient and better at heating and cooling than kind of the old traditional systems. So, and there are rebates for these as well on your taxes. So if you put these in and have, and electricians know all the rebates and how to install them, and they're pretty standard now, I think, for new buildings and remodeling. So
I think one thing like we kind of learned with this one, and we'd recommend anybody that's considering installing anything that has to do with a rebate, is to make sure if you have electricians or whoever's involved in like, you know, putting in the windows or installing this equipment, to make sure you ask them about the rebates, because a lot of times, unfortunately, I kind of think they have a little extra work that they have to do to like fill out a form to give you or produce some sort of proof that you have installed this equipment. So a lot of times it is on the homeowner, I think, like we learned that, to actually ask the contractor, like, yeah, I'm looking at getting this rebate, what do I need from you? And then they might roll their eyes and they might, you know, because a lot of them do have to do a little extra work to like provide that proof of purchase for you to then have that, you know, use it on your tax credits and turn it in to the utility company or whatever it is you need to do. So just a heads up on that. And I would make sure you ask for that. It's not always just automatic that you get those rebates because you buy an energy efficient thing that is supposed to get a rebate.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Solar panels on your garage.
So one of our first things we added to the house, I believe, when we moved in were the solar panels. We had solar panels on our old house, a lot smaller array. So then when we moved here, our goal was to try to get a little bigger array. And this is what we have here.
What do they use for? For your house, or where does the power go?
Yep, so it's tied in, so we're tied in with the grid. So when our solar panels are producing electricity, it goes into like a bi-directional meter. So if our house...
Let's see this meter here.
Yeah.
Is this what we're looking at?
So this is the bi-directional meter here. So if our house is using more electricity than our solar panels are using, we get energy from the solar panels and the grid to power everything. If our solar panels are producing more electricity, this electricity will actually feed back into the grid.
And then you get money back.
Yep. At the end of the month, we get a bill and the balance. So there's been a lot of months where we've actually produced more electricity, but then there's about a $48, $50 like hookup charge. So a lot of times our electric bill is like $20 or $30. So we've covered our electrical use, but we still have to pay that.
Like the customer charge?
Yeah.
Yeah. That everybody pays. Like that's a member of the utility.
But then if you want to get a close-up of this one here, so this, whenever that disc is spinning, so right now the disc is spinning.
Oh, wow, it's fast. Oh, yeah, okay.
So the faster that's spinning, the more electricity the solar panels are producing. So if that stops, like at night, then we're not making any electricity.
Oh, that's cool.
But since we're tied to the grid, we don't have to ever worry about not having power. So it's kind of the best of both worlds.
Nice.
Whereas if you were off the grid, then usually those people have to have like a backup source, like a generator of some sort, or some way to store the electricity.
Yeah.
But we don't have to worry about that with this system.
I think what's really interesting too is when we got our first solar system on our first house that we lived in a different house for the first 7 years when we moved to Bemidji. It was like a 2.3 system, and about, I don't know, 6-7 years later, like we moved here, we've actually the first thing we needed to do when we did our solar feasibility study, best first step, solar feasibility study. Look at your location, solar feasibility study. So that means have some professional come out, they look at your trees or any tall structures that might be blocking the sun, they do a solar shade analysis, and then they'll also look at like your electricity, like how, where would it be tied in, like how would that all work. They'll also look at your like where it would be put. So they noticed that when they came out that our shingles were old, like they were on the verge of needing to be replaced. So the first step we did that first, like next summer, is we actually replaced our shingles on our roof. So that was what we invested in first. And then I think the following summer, a couple summers later, that was when we had a 6.6 system put in. So if you remember, it was a 2.3 system on our first house, and this is a 6.6 kilowatt system. And what's really interesting about how solar has come down in price is with all of the rebates included and everything on both systems, they were about the same price. And one was about triple as big. So it was pretty amazing to have that happen. And again, we do that for the long-term energy savings, right? Like that's clear, it saves money in the long term, it's good. But ultimately we just know, and it makes so much sense to have the sun produce free energy. Like there is minimal maintenance. Matt will go up in the winter since it is on the garage, and he will sometimes
sweep off the snow.
Or he will use we have a long rake thing that he'll try to get the snow off. But if it's just a little bit of snow, usually it'll melt off because it's black. It'll warm up and the snow will come off. We have noticed that it's been really interesting to keep track of, I kept track of 2 or 3 years of energy utility bills, and it was really interesting to see the patterns. So we produce a way more solar energy in the summer, which is what most people think, than we do in the winter. And I think it's mostly due to the angle of the sun. So sun is a lot lower, there's snow that comes on the panels a lot, it's just there's cloudy days.
Days are a little longer.
Days are a little longer in the summer, the sun is higher, there's no snow on the panels. So there's, I'd say, a pretty significant amount of sun energy that we get in the summer versus the winter. So that's been kind of interesting to see.
This is our 2020 Chevy Bolt.
Nice.
Fully electric. Mm-hmm. And this is I think this is the only car we've ever bought brand new. Mm-hmm. So we decided, I'd done a little bit of research on it, and I sort of wanted to support whatever American company that was making electric cars, and this was one of Chevy's first ones, I think. And so we've had it for 4 years, and it's been great.
How does it, my question, I drive that?
Yeah.
Woo-hoo.
Yeah, nice.
We looked at the Teslas as well.
Yeah. How does this handle for you in the winter?
Well, we've had it for 4 years, and we haven't had any issues. So unlike the Tesla, this one's just got front wheel drive. It doesn't have the all-wheel drive. And funnily enough, we actually bought the truck for my son, and the first time he filled it up, it cost him like $55. And he came back and he's like, let's trade it in. I want something more fuel efficient. So we're like, so my son actually took this car over. So
Kids do that.
he hasn't had to pay for gas in like a year and a half since he turned 16.
Isn't it nice?
And he loves it. So he drives it to school every day and back.
Fun to drive, yeah.
Yeah. So like,
what's the charge for when he's at school on a freezing day? It holds its charge.
Oh yeah,
That's one question I get.
Yeah. So in the summer now, this thing will charge up to 220 miles. And like Erika said, we're like 20 miles from town, so that's easy.
A few times back
in
and
the
forth.
winter, this will charge up to about 170, 180. So it does lose a little bit, but it's still got plenty of range in the winter time.
And I would say, like, what's really interesting about the Bolt for us is our first electric vehicle we decided to get was a 2013 Nissan Leaf. So that was very early, like, adopter. And part of the reason I really wanted to do that is I love trying these things that seem like they'll be more environmental, like better in a lot of ways, and we're figuring it out, right? Like there's maybe some hiccups and maybe some things that aren't going to work good, but we really wanted to try it because a lot of people, I mean, we're way in northern Minnesota. It gets to -40 below, you know, on some days, and we just really wanted to try it. And so the leaf like had is a very small amount that it would charge. So I think it was up to 90 in the summer, and then it was about 60 or 70 miles on it only in the winter. And again, a lot of variables with how you utilize the car, how you drive, how much like of the climate control you use. But I had that car for 8 years up here, worked fine. I never had an issue until like the very end, and I think the battery was starting to get a little bit compromised, but I never had an issue with the car in northern Minnesota for 8 years, with it starting, with it holding a charge while I was at work, like anything like that. And that was a lower end like EV. And so the Bolt, like all of them have been so fun to drive. And we just we're really happy with our choice of electric vehicles. And then the last vehicle that we purchased is a used Toyota Prius Prime. So this is my vehicle and absolutely love it. What a Prime is it is a vehicle, a Prius that also plugs in. So I had looked at different vehicles, and honestly, I just really like the color of this one. So I love the color and read more about it. And we've had Priuses since like 2004 and love them as well. I mean, it's just such a big deal to go somewhere. Like when we go down to the cities, it costs us like $25 in gas, where like a lot of other people will cost them like $80 to $90. And so it saves a ton of money. If you find a good one, used one, it usually doesn't cost that much. And what I really like about the new Primes, the Prius Primes, is that they plug in, they will go fully on electric for like 20 to 30 miles, which is enough to get me into town. And then I can charge it in town, or I can just come back, but it goes for 20 to 30 miles on fully electric before it just turns over to gas. And then also when we're going long distances, we don't have to kind of think about charging and that kind of thing. So we use it a lot for when we do go to the cities, or we go to like our son's soccer games, or go further distances. So love this vehicle too for that reason.
Do you take your all electric on long trips? Your Bolt?
We've had it down to St. Cloud and back. We've gone over to Grand Forks and back. My parents live about 60 miles south of here in Park Rapids, and that'll easily go down and back. So, I mean, I think it's got like 80,000 miles on it already in 4 years, and no fossil fuels burned in.
Yeah, I drive my Tesla everywhere, all across the country.
Yeah, that's
everywhere.
awesome.
I have I have no charging anxiety. It's like it's so easy to charge. It doesn't take long.
Yep. And that is only going to get better. That's kind of what I tell people, you know, like maybe not perfect and maybe some things that we need to think about, like battery technology. I even just heard there's some new things coming out now. Like that is we're only as we use and discover and think about things, we're only going to get better. But it takes people to really get out there and try these things in order for us to kind of learn, you know, what we need to do moving into the future.
Right.
So this is our level 2 charger. And if you remember, like this one is on off peak. So right now the off peak is I guess the off peak is on. So it's like we don't have any electricity flowing to the charger. And like I said, that they give us a schedule so we know when it'll be off and on for charging. But it's typically like no electricity to this during the day, and it's on at night, which is super easy. So we just plug it in when we get home, and then it charges at night.
Plug in the level 1 charger.
Yeah. And then we also have a level 1 charger. So this is just one, like another way. There's usually typically 3 ways to charge on a lot of vehicles. There's the level 1, which is just your standard outlet. We messed up when we first got our Leaf, and we didn't have this ground faulted, right? Was that the thing?
GFI.
Yeah, we didn't have a GFI outlet out here, and it wasn't charging, so we freaked out a little. But then asked around and found out what was wrong. And once we got that, like, it was fine. And so it's just a standard 120 outlet. And we can also charge with this, but it takes a lot longer because obviously it's less energy coming through. And then, but it's a good option, like if we need that. And then this one is a level 2. So this is a 240. Is that what that is? 240. And then sometimes in large, like in gas stations or car, like, you know, places where people like work, sometimes they have level 3 chargers too, which is even, I don't even know what that means, but it's another level of charging that's even faster.
All right, so the other sort of choices we've made is using, we have an electric lawnmower, and this one is actually probably 15 years old now.
Wow.
So it's an old one. But we started with the old gas-powered pull one, and when that one was kind of on its way out, we made the choice to buy this, and it's been great. It works really well. Same thing, plug it in to charge, and then it'll do our whole lawn pretty much in one shot. There's a battery pack in here, and those batteries actually did go bad about 7-8 years ago, but I took them into a battery place and they took it all apart and ordered me new batteries. And so instead of having to buy a whole new lawnmower again, they just replaced the battery packs in there.
Nice.
And it's been working ever since. I have noticed this summer that the batteries are starting to fade a little bit more rapidly, so we'll either have to make a choice of replacing these batteries again or maybe upgrading the lawnmower. Never have to worry about it starting. It starts right up all the way, and then don't have to worry about gas or oil in it.
Matt, do you take the batteries? You have to make sure you take the batteries inside in the winter.
So that's the big thing is I never leave the batteries out here in the winter, but this thing just pops right out, and it's just sort of its own little battery pack.
Oh.
And then I can store that inside, and then in the springtime bring it back in and plug it back in, and then away we go. Then I've also got an electric string mower. Same thing, a weed whacker, I guess. And now they're making like electric chainsaws, electric blowers, electric hedge trimmers. So it's pretty handy.
I wish my neighbor would get electric stuff. They're a lot quieter compared to...
They're so much quieter.
And I think, they're a lot more efficient. Like, I think lawnmowers don't have to worry about the amount of air pollution they put out. Like, there's no catalytic converters on
Not all the
them.
riding lawnmowers,
so...
And I love it because I come in from mowing and I do not smell like gas. So I'm like, I love it, and I don't feel, I hate that smell.
Yeah.
Nice. You looking over here? There's something over here too?
I mean, we've got a electric power washer too, so I mean, you can have gas versions of that as well, but electric, you just plug it in and hook up the hose, and
things are changing.
Yeah.
We did make a decision when we got our level 2 charger to integrate it into our off-peak system. So we had an option. We already had off-peak that's connected to our dryer. And then we decided to have our level 2 car charger also hooked up to off-peak. And what that means basically, and I don't fully get it, but what it means in a nutshell is that you're hooked into a system that they can ultimately like turn on and off. Like, you can kind of have times where you don't have electricity. So if there are peak times during the day when they need to make sure they have electricity available for people, anything that's hooked to off-peak could be shut off. So our dryer's like that. I thought our dryer was messed up like at one point, but it was just the off-peak was like turned off. And then our car, what is really nice, what they do with the car is they actually tell us time periods. So they say the electricity will be on at night, typically when loads are low and not a lot of people are using electricity. So our electricity for the off-peak is on, so we can charge our car at night, and then it kind of changes by the season. But because we do that, we actually get a much lower rate. I want to say our off-peak rate is like 4.5 cents per kilowatt hour, which is significantly less than our standard around 10 cents per kilowatt hour. So if you choose to do off-peak, you have the risk of losing, you know, like your electricity use for a little bit, like randomly, except for the car charging is structured, but then you get a bonus of having a reduced rate.
My dad mentioned to me when we kind of moved back to Bemidji just to think about the number of spark plugs you have in your household. So if you add up like all the spark plugs in your car, maybe your four-wheeler, chainsaw, lawnmower, because he said a lot of places in the world, like even like in India, a family of 5 or 6 might have just one little motor scooter for the family. So their whole family has like 1 or 2 spark plugs. Whereas the average American family, we added ours up when we first moved back here and we had like 16 or 17. So we've sort of tried to reduce that. And I think right now, it's hard to say, but we're probably down to about maybe 10 spark plugs. So obviously if you can get that less, you're using less fossil fuels and just being more energy efficient. And as part of that, for a long time, we just had watercraft that were human powered. So we used to have 3 kayaks. We did sell one of them. I've actually got 3 canoes and we've got 2 paddle boards, and that's the main way we enjoy the lake out here. My younger son does love to fish, so we actually did get him a boat about 4 years ago. 4 or 5,
I think, yeah.
But even with our boat, we were looking at used boats, and our lake isn't very big, so we decided just to get like a 40 horsepower motor instead of like 100, 150. I've seen ones that are like 350 horsepower now. So we just tried to keep in mind, we got a small lake, so a small boat would be fine for that. It does have an electric trolling motor on it, so he can go along the shore and fish for his bass. And so yeah, so that was another kind of conscious choice that we made.
For me, like a big advantage, so not only, well, there's a few things. So when you're using the paddleboard, the canoe, the kayak, like all of those kind of human-powered things, like you're getting good exercise. So that's really good for us physically. And then they are also not noisy. So on the lake, a lot of people are really respecting like their kind of quiet time. And so to have, it's a really big difference to have a kayak that you're using versus like a jet ski that you're using. So no fossil fuels while you're using it. You're getting, you know, good physical exercise. You're nice and quiet versus like the jet ski, you know, using fossil fuels, pretty noisy. And I think that's like, you know, pretty clear difference between the two, and a pretty clear choice that we've made to not you know, to purchase this kind of silent sport activities.
Silent sport activities. Yeah. Why have you guys done all these changes?
I think the biggest thing is just trying to reduce our impact on the earth. Just keeping that in mind. Obviously, seems like our human population is not slowing down yet, and we are having a big impact on the earth. With everything that we're doing, and if we can lessen our impact and make it better, then I think that's what we should do. I think if we keep piling on all of our activities, I don't think that's going to be good for the earth in the long run. And it was kind of cool, I saw William Shatner, who was on Star Trek, actually went into space. And he thought he was going to be all excited to go into space, but he got kind of depressed up there because he looked back and saw our Earth and how small it is just surrounded by black space. So I know it just feels like we have to take care of the earth while we can. So, and just to think about our future generations. So that's kind of one of the main reasons.
That's good. I think very similar to Matt, I just feel like we have a responsibility. So rather than there's like kind of, you know, different mindsets about like our, like why we're here on earth. Like one is like, I have a right to do as I please, like everything is mine, like I should be in control, like all those kinds of things. But the other way of thinking is more about responsibility. Like what is my responsibility as a human being? And I think one of our responsibilities as a human being is to be good relatives to the water, to be good relatives to each other, to our plant and animal neighbors. And so when we know that like extracting fossil fuels is harmful in lots and lots of ways, when we know that using fossil fuels is harmful in so many ways, and we know that we are only contributing more and more to climate change and air pollution as we use fossil fuels, anything, like any big, little thing that we can do to reduce that impact is good. So those are some of the reasons. And I mean, tangentially, like obviously it's awesome that we can save money in either currently, like right now, or in the long run. And it's also beneficial when we educate others. So hopefully providing inspiration and hope to our friends and family and our kids and younger generations and future generations all around us. Both Matt and I have been educators. So we both believe strongly that we can have this like ripple effect. That as we try things and as we learn things, that we can then spread that out into our family and our community, and hopefully others will also think about their own responsibility.